Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. I am Mr. Kadim Khan and I am a lecturer in the Institute of Computing, Kuwait University of Science and Technology. Today we will take lecture number 26 of the subject of visual programming, in which we are going to discuss the network programming in C#.NET. And the topics are the UDP and TCP IP communication in Visual C#.NET. Dear students, in the previous lectures, we have discussed the introduction about the network programming, in which we have discussed different classes of C#.NET for network applications. And here we will discuss UDP and TCP/IP communication. That is very much advanced of the network programming, and we will present you different examples of the UDP and TCP/IP communication. This is the discussion agenda. It contains the topics of the C# networks programming. Then we have very important terms called sockets. Sockets is used for communication between two computers or more than two computers. Then we have the socket communications. In socket communication, we will perform the UDP and TCP IP communications. UDP is the user datagram protocols and is also used for the communication as like the TCP IP protocols. Now in UDP we will write a simple UDP client and also we will create a simple UDP receiver, and then we will show you the output that how you create these two. Now then we have the transmission control protocol, TCP protocol. Here we will discuss the socket flow for the TCP protocols, and also we have the example of TCP IP communications, in which we will implement the TCP IP sender and receiver to send a file, and the receiver will browse that file or open that file. So we have a very good programming examples in this lecture. So hope that you will get a good amount of knowledge in this lecture. Now, what is C# networks programming? Basically, the network programming, as its names indicate, is used to program for the network. And we perform the programming here to communicate between the two computers or more than two computers. So C# network programming is used to write the networks types of applications. So then we can use that application for downloading some data, for example, to download a file, uploading a data. We will perform these two. Video streamings used to stream the video over a network, and also the chatting applications. Now examples range from the ubiquitous web browsers such as the Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer is a web browser which will browse the data. You can use the Internet Explorers for communication in the networks programming, and also used to receive your emails to the software that controls the spacecraft at NASA. Means that when you send or receive email, this is also one of the examples of the network programming. Also, when a complex application such as in the to send or receive the data from or to the space aircraft at NASA Center is also the examples of the network programming. Now, what is the sockets? Basically, sockets is in fact a class in the network programming used for interfacing for communications. It is used in the transport layers where the communication will be performed here. So the network communication using socket is very much similar to performing the filing, in which we have discussed the input-output streams. The filing was discussed in the previous lectures. So here exactly the same, but the data will be traveled over the network. So in fact, in the socket handle is treated like the file handling. For example, one user is sending the files and the second user is receiving and then opening the files. Like in the email, when we send the files and at the receiver side, the receiver reads the files. So the streams are used for the I/O operations and also applicable to the socket-based input-output. We use certain streams for the input and also for the output purpose. Now, socket-based communication is a programming language independent. You can use the socket programming in the Javas, you can use the socket programming in C++ and in the C# as well. Also in the other .NET languages, you can write the sockets programmings. So it means that socket programs are written in C# language and also is used to communicate with other language like the sockets written in the Java or in the Visual Basics, etc. So cross-language communication is also possible for the socket programming as well. Now, Node.js also uses the sockets for communication with the clients. Node.js is in fact a server, and it is in fact an API, a software API, used to communicate between different clients. Node.js is in fact a certain UPI used for the Chrome communications when multiple clients communicate with one Node.js. Node.js uses the socket.io port for communication with the client's socket.io port. So the client library is also using that socket.io port here to communicate with the Node.js server. Socket communications runs on a specific computers, has a sockets port, and also it is bound to be a specific port for the servers. And the client port is not necessary when there is one directional communications. So when the client communicate with the servers, the server port is in fact used by the client here. So the server waits for the listeners to the sockets for clients to make a connection request. So if there is one client computer and another server computer, so server will wait for the clients to perform the communications, and in fact the server will listen to the clients here. In the bidirectional communication, there will be two ports with the same number. The one port will be with the servers and another port will be with the client. So client communicate with the server using certain communications ports. In the socket communication, the server accepts the connections that when they communicate with the using two different ports here. So server gets a new socket bounds to a different ports there. So the socket communication requires a new sockets, consequently a different port number, so that may be able to continue to listen to the original sockets for the communications request while serving the client. So there will be two different ports here. The servers will communicate with the client using that particular ports. So we will here perform the UDP communications first. UDP is also called the user datagram protocol, and it is a connection list protocol that runs on top of the IP networks. In the UDP, multiple clients communicate with the single servers, and that communication can be bidirectional as well. But UDP have no inbuilt mechanisms to make sure that all data will be sent to the receiver and the data will be received in the certain orders. Sometimes all the data are received or a partial data is received here. That's why UDP is connectionless protocol. Now here we will perform an examples of the UDP communication. In this example, we will send a hello world message over a network by using the UDP of the IP routers. So there we will have two different programs, one client and another server. So these two programs should be physically separated by thousands of kilometers. Means that they can reside on the same computer or they may be away from each other by physical address. So physically they can be separated by a big distance, But long as the IP address both computers are known, the principle still works there. So they will know each other through the UDP programmings, and the UDP data that will be sent from one computer to another computer. So UDP data is not bundled with the headers. That means that it will not bundle with the headers means that we will not find that this is specific to the particular receiver. Means that in the header we provide the address of the receivers, but there will be no header within the UDP packets. So the message will be sent from the one computer to another computer. To track the message integrity or security, there will be no header here. For example, when you watch the TV channels, so that is in fact for overall, that is the broadcastings. In the UDP, the same communication occur as well. The receiver is not obliged to reply to the senders with the acknowledgement. So when the receivers receive the data from the sender, then the receiver is not bound to send the acknowledgement that the data has been sent to the other computer. So UDP is useful for small payload transfers where all the data to be sent can be continued without one network packets. Now first we need to write the client program. The client program will be in fact a GUI where you will type a message. The message will be typed into a text box. For example, hi students, this message will be sent to the receiver. And when you click this buttons, then the message will be sent to the receiver there. Now how we will implement this example? First we need to write this client program. In the client program, first we have a packages using system.net, using system.net.sockets, using system.text and using system.io. Now when we will click on these buttons, we need to write the event here. The event will be private void button1 underscore click object sender comma system.event argse. So here we have the private event, means that this is accessible only in the current class. Void means it will not return anything. As you can see, there is no return statements in the body of this event. And button1 underscore click is the name of the event. And the click is the event which is associated with the button1. Object sender represents the object or the control which will send the event. System.event argse represents the data which will be sent when the event will occur. First of all, we will make the object of the UDP client. So UDP client, which is the user datagram protocol client is equal to new will provide the memory to the client object, and this is the constructor of the client, that is the UDP client. Next, we will take string data from the text box. So textbox1.text will provide the string data to the string to server variable. Now using this object, which is the client, and the client is the object of UDP client.send function will be used here. Client.send encoding comma ASCII.get bias to servers comma dot to servers. To server is the strings which will be sends here. Comma to server.length, it will specify the length of the strings. For example, we will count here all the character in the strings. It will be the length of the strings, and here we will provide the IP address of the receiver. That means the computer which will receive this message, and this will be the port number. The port number here will be the same for the sender as well as for the receiver. So here the port number is 1234, which is our own port number, and then we need to close the client so that this client may listen again. So client.close will occur here. So this data, which is a string data, will be sent to the receiver. Next, we need to also write the receiver. So for Implementing the receiver, we will use the same libraries using system.txt, using system.net, using system.net.sockets. All these library will be used. Then we have the console application. Now this will the receiver will be the console. Namespace console apps. Then we have class programs. This is the program. Here namespace consists of more than one classes, and here we have only one class, and the class name is the program. This is the public static void main function. It means that only one copy will be maintained in the memory of the cache, and void means it will not return anything. Main is the function where the execution will be started from here. String args represents the command line strings in the main function. Now in the void main function, we have first created the instance of the objects of UDP client class. So UDP client class here, and it has the objects is equal to new is an operator which provides the cache memory to the object client, and here we have the constructor of the UDP client, and it has 1234, which is the port number. Remember that this port number should be similar to the port number in the UDP client program as well, that is 1234, and similarly here we have also 1234. Next we have IP endpoint class, IP endpoint class. Then we here is remote IP endpoint. It is in objects is equal to new IP endpoint and IP address dot any comma 0. So it will listens to any address of the client. So IP endpoint is in fact the endpoint and representing to listens the address of the particular client. But here we have provided that any means any address of the client. While in the other program we have the address of the client is the local host address, which is 1.127.0.0.1. Now here is the string variables, that is the data type strings from the server. This will be a strings here, which means that the strings which is received from the sender is equal to encoding dot ASCII dot get strings, means that all the strings will be encoding back to ASCII, and the strings will be in fact from the client dot receive reference remote IP endpoint. So the data will be received through this port, which is the client object, through the receive functions, and the receive function take the reference parameters of the remote IP endpoint. So means that any one computer which is connected with this port number will be the data will be received from that computer. So you can see that this is the client object and this is the remote IP endpoint object, and the data will be encoded back to ASCII character, and it will be assigned to the strings from server. So from server is the string data type. Console.write lines will display the data that is sent from the sender from server. So that data will be displayed here. Now, dear students, we will implement these two programs in Visual C Sharp.net. For this purpose, click the escape button. I have clicked the escape button. Now you need to run two instances here. First, we will run this the sender, which is in fact a client. So for this purpose, open Visual Studio. Here I am browsing the Visual Studio. One click and again, okay, again open the Visual Studio. Now Visual Studio is in fact opening. This will be the one Visual Studio. Again click here to open another instance of the Visual Studio, because you require two different programs. One is the client and another is the will be the receiver. One is the sender and another will be the receiver. So you need to create two different programs, because you see here I have two instances of the Visual Studio. So I will click on the create program here. So I need to create one Windows application and the second one the console application here. Now you can see that I have two instances. First this one and second one is this one. So first I need to write the console. It's up to you if you first write the console or first you want to write the Windows application. It's up to you. So here change the language C#.NET and here select the Windows Form application, click next. So when you will click next, you will ask for the password, that is the project name. So I will write here UDP sender sender UDP sender. Click on create, and also I will here I need to write the next one is the client program. So here UDP receiver receiver receiver. Okay, create. Click on create. Now, meanwhile, the Visual Studio will create both program for us. It's up to you. First, I will write the sender. Okay. First, I need very simple GUI, one text box and one buttons controls. So go to the toolbox and drag drop one label control. Then go again to the toolbox, drag drop one text box controls. Again go to the toolbox and drag drop one button controls from the toolbox onto the form. Now change the property of the label controls here. Go to the text property and enter a message. Enter a message. Enter a message. Okay. I will remove that extra one. Okay. And click on the buttons. Send message. This is the send message buttons, and this is the text box where we will type the message here. Double click on the button to create the private void button1 underscore click event. Now here we will write the code which will be responsible to send the message here. Now go to the slides here, copy this code from the slides and paste it here. Now there will be error message because we also need to provide the namespaces here. So the namespaces are using system text and data, all these namespaces. So also paste all the namespaces here. Okay. Now our sender program has completed. So now also go to the client program, right, and go to the slides. This is the client program. Copy it here and paste it into void main function. Also copy the libraries from the receiver program and write the libraries here. Now our both programs are completed. Now we have completed two different programs. One is the sender and one is the receiver. Receiver is in the console application while sender is in the GUI application. Dear students, make sure that first you have to run the receiver because receiver will wait for the client. You can see that the receiver has run, and then we will also compile and run the senders. This is the receiver, which is the console application, and this one is the sender, which is the Windows application. You can type any message here. For example, I want to type that Cohort University. This is the message. When I will click here, you can see that this message is sent to the receiver. Cohort University is there, which is the output of the receiver program, and this one is the sender applications. So when I click on this text, these buttons, this text in the text box is sent to the receiver applications, Cohort University of Science and Technology, and so on. So that was the example how the UDP works, that communication from one application to another through the UDP protocol. Okay, now we will resume the slides for the next topics. You have to implement that properly so that you can make a very useful programming examples. This was the output. Hi students, you must work hard for success. If you click these buttons, then that message will be sent to the receiver. So first you need to run the console application, which is the receivers, and then after you will requires to run the Windows application, which is the sender. Now, another important concepts in the network programming is the transmission control protocol, that is the TCP protocol. Transmission control protocols having a classes used to connect the send and receive using two sockets endpoints. Here we will provide the IP address as well as the port number. So using these two information, we can communicate between two computers, and the communication will be done through the TCP protocol. Here we need to write TCP client and TCP listeners. TCP client will send data to the TCP listeners. So we can use different ports. Well-known ports are 80, 443 and 21. So we can use all these, or we can also use any one of the ports. For example, previously we used 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also use these three ports as well. So TCP client class will be able to use a communication between to communicate to the TCP listeners using the TCP protocols. Here the start request function will be required here, and the start request means that the start function will make the connections, and then accept sockets will be required also on the receiver sides. And when the connection request arises at the receiver sides, then we will use accept sockets functions to accept the communications with the remote machine. So to demonstrate the application for these classes, we require to build two different applications. One will be the TCP client and another one will be the TCP listeners. So here we have a different application where this TCP client will send a files to the TCP listener, and TCP listener will browse that files here. Now how socket flow will work here? First of all, we will use the sockets. First, set up the sockets. In the setup of sockets, we will provide the IP address and the host name of the receiver. What service gets the data will be based on the port number. So port number will be similar for the sender and receiver. So send and receive data at the other sides, the data will be sent and then that data will be received. So here it is exactly like the IO in the files are in the Unix. So here the send function or the write function will be used here. While also at the end point, at the other point part, receive or read functions can be used here. And then at the end we will close the sockets. By closing the sockets mean that we will release the resources of the networks. Now this will be the output. This is the sender and this is the receiver. Here we will provide the IP address of the receivers that to whom we are sending this data. That is 127.0.0.1, which is the IP address of the local host. Here we will provide the port number FACULTY05112. Here we will write the path of the files which will be required to send to this receiver. Also, you can browse the path by open the file shares. When you click it, then the browse dialogs will appear and you will type the or we will select the particular path of the files where you want to send. Then we will click on the send button, while at the same time receiver will be able to receive or pursue this data. Now how all this work here? First we need to write the sender. For the sender, here the buttons send underscore click event will send the files. First of all, the port number will be stored in the string host name. So the port number will be stored here. Here, the the port number will be stored in the host name variable of the string data type, and that will be read from the txt port number, txt port text box. This is the first text box here. That is this one text box. This one, the port number. Again, that is int port int.32 pers txt ip.text. So here the IP will be stored into int port here. Okay, this will be the port. In fact, this will be the txt not port but txt IP. This is the txt IP, and this is the txt port, right? Okay, that is the txt IP will be stored here because of the string, and also we need to typecast the txt port into int32.pers. Simple int will also work, and it will be assigned to prt port. Next is we will declare the TCP client object. TCP client TC is equal to new TCP client. Host name will be the IP address, and port will be the port number provided into two different text boxes. Next is the network stream nstc.get streams. It will initiate the stream for this host, which is the TCP client for this client, and then we will have file streams fs new file.open txt.text and file mode.open. Here we will in fact initialize the files object, file streams object fs fl.open text, and here the path of the file will be taken from the txt file text box, and file mode.open means that this file will be in the open mode. In data fs.read bytes, all the bytes will be stored in the data variable of int, while data is not equal to -1. That means the number of data are not equal to -1. So all the data will be read, and until the number of bytes in that particular files is not equal to -1, then ns.read byte data. Here all the data will be read into the ns, that is the all data will be written here, and data is equal to fs.read bytes. So it will read all data, and data will be in fact provided or assigned to the data variable, which is the integer here. fs.close, so here we will close the file stream fs. ns.close, here we will also close the network streams, and also we will close the TCP client. Also we have a buttons, that is the buttons, button 1 underscore click object senders event args. That means that this is the in fact first button which will browse the files. Open file dialog, ofd is equal to new open file dialogs, ofd.show dialogs. Now strings str is equal to ofd.file name. All the strings will be assigned here, and txt file.text is equal to str.toString. So when we will browse the files, the path of the file will be displayed into txt file.text, and then this txt files will be used here to open that particular files. Now here, when the data will be in fact sent from one computer to another, then the data will be in fact all the streams will be closed here. This is the TCP IP sender. Also, we will implement the TCP IP receivers here. So for this purpose, we will use the public delegate void test delegate string str. So here we will use a certain delegate class, and using the test delegate function, the delegate is in fact used to reference to a functions. That is similar as like the reference to the pointer in the C or C++, but here this is the function, and this reference will be used here uh, in another uh, here in another line of code. So test delegate will be used here. Now we have the form1, the constructor of the form1 class. Here we will initialize a thread t, new thread starts listen data. So this thread will listens to the sender. It is a receiver code, so this thread will continuously listens to the receiver. So here thread t, new thread starts, it will start the thread and listens the data. And t dot start means the thread will be started here. Here we have declared the t as object of the thread, and the thread will be started here. Also we have another function public void test string str txt.text is equal to str. This is a function which will receive the data. So it is a public and void and test function string str, and the data will be assigned to the txt data text box. So it will read the data into that multi-line text box. Now we have also another function public void listen data, because this function is in fact called in the constructor, which is the form1 here listen data, and this function is in fact provided as a parameter to the thread here, and the thread will start here. So this program also covers the threading concepts. Now in the lesson data function, which is a public void function because it doesn't return anything and it is accessible anywhere in this application. Now IP address is equal to IP address dot parse. This is the IP address, means that the IP address of the sender, where we have provided this IP address in the text box of the receiver, that is the sender. So this is the receiver IP address, here the IP address of this class. Now int32 port number 2112 is the port number. It is the int32 data type PRT port number. TCP listener T1 new TCP listener IPAD comma PRT. So using this IP address, we will IP address and the port number, we will implement communication to the TCP IP listener of T1 objects. So T1 dot start means that listening will be started here. Similarly, TCP client T1 dot accept TCP client. So there the client will be accepted, and TCP stores the acceptance of the clients from the TCP clients here. And TCP is the transmission control protocol. Now network stream NSTC.get network stream, it will get the network stream. Stream reader SR new stream reader. When the stream will be established, here it's established the stream. Stream is for example a pipe, and then the water will travel through the pipe using the stream reader. Stream reader will read the pipe. So NS is here and the parameter of the stream reader constructor SR. Then string result is equal to SR dot read to end, means that all the files will be read from start to end, and the data will be stored in the string format of the result variable. Invoke new test delegate test new objects results. It will invoke that delegate class, in fact that delegate functions, which we have implemented on the top of the class, invoke new test delegate test, new objects, and here it is the array objects results. So it will call this functions and it will invoke this function when this function will be called, and it will transfer the data. So the result is transferred here because it is the strings here. Similarly, tcp.close and t1.close. So that is the client will be closed. TCP IP client will be closed. Similarly, that T1 will also be closed here. While T1 is a TCP listeners here. So TCP clients and TCP listener will be closed here. Now, when you will implement this, so first you need to run this applications, and also you need to run this application both. So you provides the IP address of the receiver, also provide the port number which is implemented in the programming of this receiver, also browse the files here and provide it here, and then click on the send button. As soon as you click on the send button, the data will be displayed here. Now, dear students, we will implement this program in our C#.NET. So, for this purpose, click on the escape button. When you click on the escape button, then you need to create two instances of the Visual C# here. So, I will run here two instances of Visual Studio. Here, this is the first instance. Again, click here and type the Visual Studio. Again, run the second instance of the Visual Studio. Now click on the create new projects here for one instance. Here you can see that I have clicked on the create buttons to run the first instance of the Visual Studio. Here I will requires the Windows applications. So click on the Windows apps, create next. First I need the sender, so I will set TCP sender and create. Click on the create button. Also, I will click for this. It create new Windows application. I will also need one client. This is the TCP sender, and here also I need another Windows applications for the client. I will select C sharp, and from here I need another Windows application. Click next. Right here TCP receiver. Receiver. Okay, and create. Click on the create button. Now I have two different applications. One is the sender and second one is the receiver. First I will write the sender programs. So for this purpose I will go to the slides here. I need to design a GUI like this. So I need three text boxes. Here click on the text box and drag drop it here. Again click on another text box. You can drag copy paste as well, but also you can drag drop the same text box three times. So you can see that text boxes are provided here. Now I need to write the port host names, port and data. So I also need one label controls. Okay, go to the properties of label control right here, that uh, IP IP of the receiver. So IP, just copy and paste it here. Here port number, port number, and then again I'll need another label, that is port number, and then here will be the data. So data Then click on the toolbox. Then also drag drop one button control, copy this button, control C, control V. Now change the text property of this button, that is browse, for example, browse, and send. Send will be the label of this button. Now my client sender GUI is complete. Now double click this buttons first, then go to the slides here. Okay, first we need to write the browse code here, so just copy this code and paste it here. So this code has been pasted here. Again go double click it. Okay, and copy this code from the slides and also paste it here. Okay, and again go to the slides. Okay, copy it and paste it over here. Okay, now also we need to copy some files, some libraries here. So copy this library and paste it over the top of the code. So paste it here. Now library has been completed. Now you can see that this is txt files, while in our GUI this is textbox1, textbox2, textbox3. So you can change its names. This one is the IP, txt IP, txt port number, txt data. So I will search at txt IP, txt port and txt file. So I need to change its names. That is the txt IP, txt port and txt file, txt IP. So go to the properties, go to the text box. You need to select first text box, then the txt IP and press enter. Click here, go to the properties, right here txt port, txt port. Make sure that the spelling should be the same as like in the code. So, and here will be txt data, txt file, txt file. Now if you click here, now you can see that the error message are completely removed here. Now our program for the sender side is completed. Now go to the receiver sides. This is the receiver side program. Just here you need one multi-line text box. So click here and click this text box. Go to the property, makes its multi-line true. Here is the multi-line false. You need to make it true. So when I have make it to true, so the file will be browsed here, which will be sent from the sender, and this one is the receiver. Now right click view code. When you right click view code, you will be able to view the code here and go to the slides here. First you need to write some, that is the sender. So go to the receiver. This is the receivers. You need to write to copy these three or four, these four namespaces, and put it here in the receivers library section. Now I have pasted all these libraries here. Again go here and first select this delegate line and also paste it here. Okay. Also copy these two lines, and also you need to paste it here. Okay. Again go to the, also copy this function completely and paste it near the constructor of the receiver. That is the form1 constructor, and paste it here. Also you need to write this function completely, and you have to paste it somewhere here. Okay, now my code is complete, but I have one error here because the name of this multi-line text box is txt text box 1. So I will change txt data, txt data. Okay, now again I will go towards the code. Now you can see that the errors, there are no errors in this programs, and program is completely developed. So now I will send a files from a sender to the receiver. This is the receiver and this is the sender. This is the sender. Now first compile the sender. First I have compiled the sender. Now this is the sender. First compile the sender. I have compiled sender. Also you can compile the receiver as well. This is the receiver. So I have two different programs. One is the sender and one is the receiver. Now write the IP of the receiver, which is 127.0.0.1, and the port number that we have provided 2112. It should be similar to the port number of the receiver. So let me check that it is the 2112. Yes. Okay. So there are two programs. One is the sender and receiver. I have typed the IP and port number of the receiver. Click on the browse to show the file here which you want to send to the uh, receiver. For example, I am sending this car file here, or you can send any other file as well. So I am sending it. Click on open. When you will click on open, the path of the file will be stored here in the text box, that is txt file. Click on the send button. When I will click on the send button, you will see the contents of these files on the receiver multi-line text box. So click here, you can see that Toyota, Suzuki, BMW is now here. That means the contents of these files are sent here. Now what is the file? The file is in fact a file which consists some text here. This is the file here. This one is the txt file. Click. I want to show you the file. You can see that there are two names of the cars, Toyota, Suzuki, BMW, and the contents of one file is sent to the receiver. So actually the file is cars.txt, and that is sent to the receiver through using the TCP IP protocol. So that was the example that we have executed here. Hope that you have obtained a very good idea about the TCP IP communications. Dear students, I hope that you have learned the TCP IP and UDP communication in C#.NET. This is the book reference. You can find more examples in this book, and the book name is Network Programming is in .NET with C# and Visual Basics. You can read this book, and you can use C++, C# as well as the Visual Basic as well. And still, if you have any question, you can ask to the email. My email is m.kadeem@kust.ud.pk. I will wait for your question and will respond to you immediately as soon as I get them. Thank you very much.